Emily Parker had 60 seconds. That was it. 1 minute to grab the laundry from the dryer before getting dinner started. 1 minute with the late Arizona sun bleeding through the back windows, casting golden light over the yard where her daughter giggled beside a red plastic toy and a full-grown bobcat lay sunbathing. 1 minute when everything seemed perfect before the world split open. She heard it just as her hand touched the dryer door. That sound. Low, guttural, primitive. Max's growl. Her heart clenched. Emily dropped the shirt in her hand and bolted back through the kitchen. Through the window, she couldn't see Lily anymore. The scream lodged in her throat as she yanked open the door. And there, across the yard, Max had Lily by the back of her denim overalls, dragging her away from the blanket. "No, Max," she shouted, her voice breaking. But he didn't stop. His body was taut with urgency, ears flattened, tail low, powerful limbs pulling her baby girl in frantic jerks toward the porch. His jaws clamped the fabric, not her skin, but the sight tore through Emily like fire. She sprinted, barefoot across the gravel path, legs pumping, screaming the bobcat's name again. Lily wasn't crying, only stunned, wide-eyed, her tiny hands clutching at tufts of grass as she was hauled backward. Then Max dropped her. His body twisted. He turned back, away from Lily, and lunged at something Emily hadn't even noticed. Only now did she hear it. The rattle. Coiled beside the baby blanket, a fat western diamondback rattlesnake, tail buzzing, fangs bared. Time split in half. Max flung himself between the snake and Lily. The strike landed before Emily could reach them. A flash of movement, a hiss, and then Max collapsed. He didn't cry out, just crumpled. 1 moment alive with fury, then folded, motionless in the dust. Emily scooped up Lily in one motion and backed away. The rattlesnake reared again, tongue flickering. She spotted the garden hoe against the porch and snatched it up with trembling hands. With calm she didn't feel, she guided the snake into the wide plastic bin she kept for just this reason. The lid snapped shut. The rattle silenced. The entire yard fell still. Emily turned. Max lay still near the edge of the blanket, his tawny fur darkened with blood. She dropped to her knees beside him. His chest rose, shallow, quick. Her voice cracked. "Oh my God, Max! What did you do?" The venomous puncture wounds on his front leg were already swelling, the fur matted and dark. Max blinked slowly, golden eyes glazing over. Emily didn't wait. She was already dialing Dr. Harris with shaking fingers as she ran toward the garage. "He saved her," she whispered into the phone. He got between her and the snake. 6 hours earlier, the morning had begun with soft laughter and cereal spilled across the kitchen floor. Emily had juggled Lily in one arm while prepping Max's morning meal, a mix of raw chicken supplements and crushed calcium tablets. The bobcat waited silently outside the screen door, his tufted ears twitching with attention. Long limbs curled like a sphinx in the sun. Max had lived with them for 3 months now. He was never tame, never a pet. But he watched. He learned. He'd begun waiting for Lily to finish breakfast before approaching the porch. If she squealed too loud, he backed away. If she dropped food, he ignored it. Emily had never trusted him alone with her. Not once. The balance between predator and protector was too fragile. But she respected him. Max had been rescued from an illegal snare trap deep in the Prescott National Forest. He was a skeleton when they found him, his paw mangled, infection setting in. Most would have euthanized him, but Emily had insisted they try. She was a wildlife rehab specialist, not a zookeeper. She believed in wild animals staying wild, but Max didn't fit the mold. Too injured to hunt, too calm to fear her. When the center lost funding and Max's enclosure was on the chopping block, Emily had done something she never expected. She brought him home. She'd passed every inspection, built a separate enclosure, signed paperwork so thick it came in binders. Still, there were warnings. "He's unpredictable. one official told her. You can never forget what he is. But watching him now collapsed in the grass after saving Lily, she couldn't think of him as a threat, only a protector. She loaded him gently into the carrier, his breathing ragged, eyes fluttering. Lily sat strapped in the back seat of the SUV, clutching a stuffed elephant, her expression quiet, confused. Emily started the engine. "Hang on," she whispered to Max. "Please, just hang on." 40 minutes later, Dr. Harris met her at the clinic doors with a gurney. "Swelling's localized." "That's a good sign," he said, pressing a hand to Max's chest. "He's shocky, but responsive. We'll get him on fluids and antivenom now." Inside the sterile exam room, Emily bounced Lily on her hip as she watched them work. Max's leg was ballooned with swelling, fur shaved around the bite marks. His breathing came in short gasps. Dr. Harris adjusted the IV line. "You're lucky," he said softly. "Most cats would have run." He ran toward the danger. Emily's voice cracked. He dragged her away. He didn't even touch her skin, just the overall. Dr. Harris blinked. "That's extraordinary." "It doesn't make sense," she said. "He's not a dog. He's a bobcat. I never trained him for this." He gave a tired smile. "Animals surprise us all the time." Emily didn't reply. She looked down at Max, her patient, her mystery, her wild-hearted housemate, and for the first time she felt something shift. This wasn't just rescue anymore. This was bond. The moment Emily handed Max over to Dr. Harris, something inside her cracked. It wasn't panic. It wasn't just fear. It was the unbearable weight of responsibility. She'd brought a wild animal into her home. She had calculated the risks, signed the forms, built the fences, and memorized every regulation. She'd told herself she could do this, that she could draw the line between instinct and family. And now, Max was dying. He hadn't attacked. He hadn't lashed out. He had protected her daughter, like a soldier protecting the last good thing in a ruined world. And in return, venom had flooded his veins. Emily stood in the corner of the exam room, Lily in her arms, silent and still. The toddler was normally a blur of movement, always babbling, always tugging, always reaching, but not now. She clung to her mother's shirt, head pressed into her shoulder, as if even she could sense the fragility in the air. Dr. Harris worked quickly with his assistant, cutting away matted fur, flushing the wound, inserting IV lines, and drawing blood. Vitals are weak, but holding. Respirations shallow. The PB's low. Antivenom in now, he said, injecting the life-saving serum into Max's IV with practiced speed. "Emily, he's fighting. That's all we can ask for, right now." Emily barely heard him. Her eyes were on Max. On the rise and fall of his chest, on the twitch of his ears, on the way his head lolled slightly. When the assistant adjusted the bandages, she remembered how he looked the day they first met. Barely more than a kitten. Fur dull, eyes glazed, paw mangled from a steel snare left to rot in the forest. She had been the one who reached into the cage back then. He hadn't hissed. He hadn't bit. He had only looked at her. This stranger with gentle hands, and blinked once, slowly. They had saved him then. Could they do it again? 45 minutes passed before Dr. Harris stepped back and wiped sweat from his brow. "He's stable. For now," he said. "But the next 12 hours will be critical." Emily nodded, numb. "Should I stay?" "You can," he offered. "But you've got Lily, and frankly there's nothing more you can do tonight. If anything changes, I'll call immediately." Emily looked at her daughter, whose eyelids drooped heavily against her chest. Max lay unconscious in a large kennel lined with warm blankets and monitoring equipment. His leg was bandaged, IV dripping slowly into his bloodstream, a thin oxygen tube looped near his nose. He looked like a warrior wounded in battle, broken but not defeated. Emily stepped closer and crouched beside him. Her fingers brushed lightly against the fur of his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. She wasn't sure if she was thanking him for saving Lily, or for changing the very definition of what it meant to be wild. The house was too quiet when she got home. Mrs. Thornton, the elderly neighbor who'd helped with Lily in the past, was already on the porch waiting. "Poor thing," she said gently, as Emily carried the sleeping toddler into the living room. "How is he?" "Holding on," Emily said, her voice barely more than a breath. She laid Lily in her crib and pulled the small blanket over her. The child stirred slightly, then rolled to her side and exhaled a soft sigh. Peaceful, unaware, Emily returned to the porch, where Mrs. Thornton handed her a steaming mug of chamomile tea. "I'll stay the night, if you need someone to talk to." "I just keep checking my phone every 5 minutes," Emily admitted with a bitter smile. "I already feel like I failed him." Mrs. Thornton's gaze was steady. "You didn't fail anyone. That Bobcat did something no one could have expected. He chose your little girl over himself. That's not instinct. That's something more." Emily looked out across the yard. The blanket Lily had been playing on still lay there, now ruffled and half covered in dust. The storage bin with the snake inside remained sealed near the garden fence. She'd release it in the forest tomorrow, far from the house. But the damage had already been done. Max had crossed a boundary that no textbook, no manual, no permit had prepared her for. At 9:12 p.m., her phone buzzed. Dr. Harris. She answered on the first ring. "He's stable," the vet said immediately. Breathing's improved. No signs of necrosis yet, and the swelling hasn't spread. Emily exhaled so sharply she nearly sobbed. "He's not out of danger," Harris cautioned. "But I'm hopeful, really hopeful." "Thank you," she whispered. She sat down heavily on the couch and finally let the tears come, not just from fear, but from the unbearable awe of what had just happened. A wild bobcat had protected her child, not because it was trained, not because it was told to, because it chose to. The next morning dawned pale and cool. A soft wind rolled over the yard, rustling the oak leaves and stirring dust on the porch. Emily stood barefoot outside, a cup of black coffee in her hands, waiting for another call from the clinic. Max had survived the night. The swelling in his leg was receding. He was awake, alert, and had even tried to stand briefly. Harris said if the next few hours continued this way, she could bring him home by afternoon. Emily had barely slept, but sleep wasn't what she needed. She needed to see him. By 2 hours on p.m., she was back at the clinic. Dr. Harris met her in the back hall with a tired smile. "He's ready," he said. "Still groggy, but I've taken him off IV fluids. The bandage stays on for a few more days, and he'll need oral antibiotics." He handed her a small prescription bottle, twice a day, with food. Emily raised an eyebrow. "Have you ever tried feeding pills to a bobcat?" The vet chuckled. "I've seen you handle worse." Max was waiting in the recovery kennel. He looked smaller somehow, his bandaged leg tucked under him, golden eyes heavy with fatigue. But when Emily entered, his gaze lifted and fixed on her. Not aggressive, not fearful, just aware. "Still here." She knelt beside the carrier, holding the blanket she'd brought from home. It smelled of pine, sunshine, and faintly of Lily. "You ready, big guy?" she murmured. She didn't expect an answer, but Max didn't retreat. He shifted his weight and, with effort, limped forward into the carrier. The drive home was quiet. Lily babbled softly in the back seat, holding her stuffed elephant against the window. Emily kept glancing at the passenger seat where Max's carrier sat, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. "You don't belong in a cage," she said aloud. "You never did." But the forest had nearly killed him, and now the wild had taken something from him again. Only this time he had given something too. Emily tightened her grip on the steering wheel. She didn't know what to call it. Loyalty? Love? Something beyond all of that. Whatever it was, it had changed everything. She opened the front door, and Mrs. Thornton greeted her with a broad smile. "How's our hero?" "Alive," Emily said. "Stubborn. And still Max." Lily squealed and ran toward the carrier. "Max!" Emily gently caught her and held her back. "He needs rest, sweetheart. Let's give him space. She placed the carrier in the living room and opened the door. Max stepped out slowly, favoring his leg, and settled near the sliding glass door where sunlight poured across the floor. He didn't seek out affection. He never had. But as Lily waddled to her playpen and babbled nonsense while stacking blocks, Max's eyes never left her. The Bobcat slept for 16 hours straight. Not deep sleep. Emily could tell by the twitch of his ears, the shifting of his tail, the subtle lift of his head whenever Lily laughed, but a kind of exhausted semi-rest, like a soldier recovering from war with one eye always open. She didn't leave his side. She set up a foam mat in the living room, just a few feet away from Max's usual spot by the sliding door, and curled up there after putting Lily to bed, not because Max needed her, but because she needed him. She had to see him breathing, had to know he hadn't slipped away in the dark. Once, just before sunrise, she woke to the sound of him rising to drink from his water bowl. He moved stiffly, bandaged leg hovering with each step. But he moved. She didn't speak. She didn't reach out. She only watched, grateful. By mid-morning, Lily was back to her usual self, running across the living room on chubby legs, clapping for no reason, babbling excitedly about Max. Her pronunciation still lacked clarity, but the intent was clear. She kept pointing at the Bobcat, then looking at Emily wide-eyed with a grin. "She knows what he did," Emily muttered under her breath. It sounded crazy, but every time Lily glanced Max's way, her face lit up, not with curiosity but recognition. The child knew something had happened, and somehow she trusted Max even more now than before. Emily didn't check her email until noon, and when she did, she froze. 12 unread messages, 4 missed calls, 2 voicemails, all from people she worked with at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. She clicked the first email. Subject: I heard about Max. Is it true? The second: Emily, I need to know if this is just a rumor, or if you really let him near your daughter. The third one was from her former supervisor, Lisa. Emily, call me. If this gets out without context, it's going to explode. I'm already getting calls from the state office. You need to file an incident report immediately. I don't care what happened, just get ahead of it. Emily's throat tightened. She looked across the room at Max, still dozing, his body rising and falling steadily. She glanced at Lily, now building a clumsy tower of blocks with fierce concentration, and she realized this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The first call she returned was to Lisa. Her voice came sharp through the speaker. Thank God. I thought maybe you were hiding. I've been dealing with a near-death crisis, Emily replied coldly. Not hiding. Lisa exhaled. Okay, fair, but I need to understand. Did Max bite Lily? No. Scratch her? No. Did he act aggressively toward her in any way? Emily hesitated, then shook her head. No. He saved her. There was silence on the line. Then Lisa's tone changed, softening, but not entirely. Saved her how? Emily explained everything. The 60 seconds. The growl. The snake. The dragging. The bite. Lisa listened, without interrupting. When Emily finished, there was a long pause. That's insane, she said. A wild bobcat exhibiting defensive behavior toward a toddler. That's not just rare, it's undocumented. Emily felt heat rising in her chest. Are you going to report me? You already have a permit, Lisa said. But we're going to need a full incident report. Photos. Witness statement. If you have one. Mrs. Thornton saw Max after the fact. That helps. But listen. This isn't just about Max. It's about precedent. The state could revoke your license if they think you endangered your child. Emily's voice dropped. But he didn't. He protected her. That doesn't matter to bureaucrats, Lisa said. They see child plus predator in shared space, and they lose their minds. Emily filed the report that evening. She included every detail, described Max's body language. The untouched skin on Lily's back, the careful grip on her overalls, the snake, the bite, the emergency, the outcome. She also attached a photo she had taken that morning, Lily sitting safely in her playpen, babbling at Max as he lay in the sun, calm and alert. It wasn't proof, but it was truth. 3 days passed before the official letter arrived. Arizona Wildlife Licensing Board. It was worded like a warning, not a sentence. We are in receipt of your incident report. Your continued permit eligibility will depend upon satisfactory completion of an in-home safety reassessment and wildlife behavior evaluation scheduled for next Friday. It didn't say Max was in danger, but Emily knew better. If the state felt she'd breached trust, if they thought she couldn't control the animal, Max could be removed, forcibly, relocated, or worse, euthanized. She stared at the letter for a long time, then folded it slowly and placed it in the drawer beside her keys. Max hadn't done anything wrong. He had done everything right, and now he might be punished for it. That night, Margaret called. Emily almost didn't answer, but guilt pushed her thumb against the screen. I heard from Susan next door, Margaret said, before Emily could say hello. She said you had a run-in with a rattlesnake, and that Max is injured. Emily kept her voice level. That's accurate. There was a pause, then the sound of a sigh. And Lily, she's fine. And the bobcat dragged her, by her overalls, away from the snake. Then he got bit, protecting her. Silence. Emily, Margaret said, her voice low, you know how I feel about this animal. Yes, I do. I've never trusted him. I never will. And now this just proves you're wrong. The words came sharper than Emily intended. Max could have run, could have done nothing. Instead, he saved my daughter. Margaret's voice cracked. It's still a wild animal. What if next time he reacts differently? Emily stood in the dark kitchen, staring out the window at Max's silhouette, barely visible in the moonlight. He was sitting near the porch, his bandaged leg tucked under him, ears twitching as if tuned to the world in ways she could never comprehend. He's family, Mom, she said softly. Not in the way you're used to, but in the way that matters. Margaret didn't respond. The next morning, Emily got a surprise visitor. Dr. Harris. He stood at the porch in his dusty trucker hat, clipboard under one arm. Just thought I'd stop by, he said with a crooked smile. I figured you might need some backup when the state shows up. Emily raised an eyebrow. You're not even on their payroll. Nope, but I do have 3 decades of field data, and I'd love the chance to record what Max did. You think they'll listen? He shrugged. Doesn't matter. I'll talk anyway. That night, Emily sat on the porch, Lily asleep inside, Max resting just a few feet away. She spoke aloud, even though no one was there to answer. I used to think I understood the wild, she said quietly, that I could define it, categorize it, set boundaries around it. She looked at Max, but I was wrong. The wild doesn't live out there. She pointed toward the trees beyond the fence. It lives in here, she whispered, tapping her chest. Max blinked, slow and deliberate, the kind of blink cats use when they trust you enough to close their eyes. Emily stood in the living room, heart pounding, as a white SUV pulled into her gravel driveway. They were early. She had exactly 0 seconds left to rehearse anything. Through the window, she saw 2 officials step out. One man in a brown vest marked with the Arizona Wildlife Licensing Board emblem, clipboard already in hand. The other was a woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a sharp, unreadable expression. Behind her, Max stirred. The bobcat had been lying in his usual spot by the sliding glass door, front legs still wrapped in gauze. He raised his head now, ears swiveling toward the sound of the approaching footsteps. Emily leaned down and whispered, "You be good." Max didn't move, but his golden eyes met hers. The knock came precise and professional. Emily opened the door to 2 names she recognized from previous correspondences. Daniel Reese and Lara Patel. Ms. Parker, Daniel said with a courteous nod, we appreciate your cooperation. Lara didn't smile. We'll need to conduct a full walkthrough of the residence and the enclosure. We'll ask questions throughout. It should take under an hour. Emily nodded and stepped back. Come in. They entered briskly, scanning the space with quick eyes. Daniel made notes while Lara ran a hand along the frame of the sliding door. Max remained still, watching them with wary calm. Emily resisted the urge to speak. She wasn't here to defend Max. She was here to make them see him. Lara stopped in front of the Bobcat, who remained seated, regal in posture. I understand this is Max, she said, eyes narrowed. Yes, Emily replied. He's recovering from a rattlesnake bite he received while protecting my daughter. Lara's brows lifted slightly. So the rumors were accurate. They weren't rumors, Emily said, a little too sharply. They were facts. Daniel turned. Let's talk about that. According to your incident report, Max moved your daughter. How old? 1, just over 13 months. He moved her physically from the vicinity of a live rattlesnake, using his mouth, by her clothing, her overalls. And you're sure he didn't harm her? Not a scratch. Lara scribbled something, then looked up. Do you consider that appropriate behavior for a non-domesticated predator in a family home? Emily met her gaze. I consider it miraculous. They moved to the kitchen. Emily pointed out the safety barriers, the storage location for Max's food, the emergency contact chart pinned on the wall. They made no comments. Just check marks. Then came the outdoor enclosure. It had cost Emily nearly $9,000 to build. Reinforced chain-link fencing sunk 3 feet into the earth. Dual-lock gates, shade structures, and a secure feeding station. It was empty now. Max preferred to be near the house since the bite, but it remained spotless and well-maintained. Daniel took a photo. Lara nodded curtly. Passes structural standards, she muttered. But Emily saw it in her posture. None of this was winning them over. Back inside, Lily was waking from her nap. Her soft voice carried through the baby monitor. Emily excused herself, returning moments later with her daughter on her hip. Lily blinked sleepily at the strangers. Then her eyes found Max. Max, she said, reaching a hand toward him. Max rose slowly, limping, and approached the edge of the rug, stopping several feet from the child. He lowered himself again, watching, always watching. Lara took a step forward. Please keep the child at a distance from the animal during our visit. Emily bristled. He's never hurt her. That may be, Daniel cut in, but we are here to assess risk, not results. Emily turned toward him, cradling Lily against her chest. He could have done nothing. He could have run, but he didn't. He put himself between her and a venomous snake. You can call it risk all you want, but to me that looks like Barn. There was a beat of silence. Then Lara clicked her pen. Let's talk precedent. Emily led them to her office, where she kept all documentation, Max's rescue history, his medical records, rehabilitation photos, permits, and the original behavioral assessments from the Wildlife Center. As Lara flipped through one folder, Daniel asked, Has Max ever exhibited aggression toward you, your daughter, or others? No, Emily replied. But he's growled at threats. Once, at a stray dog that wandered near the fence. Once, when a hawk got too close to Lily's blanket in the yard. And you interpret that as protective instinct? Emily nodded. He's alert, watchful, but never predatory toward us. Lara looked up. Do you think animals can develop emotional bonds? Yes, Emily said without hesitation. And if I didn't before last week, I sure do now. The inspection ended without smiles, without reassurances, just a clipped, "We'll be in touch," and the sound of their SUV tires crunching away down the driveway. Emily stood alone by the door, Lily on her hip, Max lying quietly nearby. She didn't know what they would decide, but she knew what was true. That evening the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Dr. Harris, and he wasn't alone. Two younger researchers stood behind him, one with a GoPro, the other with a notepad. "I got permission to document Max's case," Harris said with a grin. "It's officially classified as a candidate for anomalous interspecies behavior." Emily blinked. "That's a mouthful. It means what he did isn't just rare. It's never been observed under formal conditions." The younger woman stepped forward, extending a hand. "I'm Katie from the University of Arizona Ethology Department. We'd like to ask if you'd be willing to let us observe Max, just passive documentation, no interference." Emily glanced toward Max, who now stood by the far window, sunlight catching in his eyes. "If it helps him," she said, "then yes, later, after the researchers left and Lily was asleep." Emily sat beside Max with a plate of cooked chicken in one hand and his evening antibiotics hidden inside a small meatball. He sniffed, wary at first, then took it gently from her palm. "Good boy," she whispered. He licked his lips once, then lay down, eyes fixed on the spot where Lily had last been sitting. "You don't have to keep watching her," Emily said softly. "She's safe now." But Max didn't move. He stayed alert, as if the world hadn't yet proven it could be trusted. And in the quiet, Emily realized she was no longer certain where the line between guardian and wild animal really lived. Maybe Max had erased it. Maybe that was the point. 3 days after the inspection, the footage leaked. It started as a short clip on a local wildlife conservation blog. Emily on her porch, Max lying in the background, Lily toddling across the grass while the narrator emphasized the blurred line between compassion and recklessness. By noon, it was everywhere. The title on the most viral post read, "Arizona woman keeps wild bobcat around baby. You won't believe what happens." Emily watched it unfold in real time. The grainy photo from a distance. The headlines twisted for clicks. The comments ranged from curious to cruel. "Is she insane? That's a predator, not a pet. This should be illegal. What happens when the cat decides the kid is food? If she cared about her child, she'd put it up for adoption. Or the cat. Or both." Emily closed the laptop before the bile in her throat could rise any higher. She hadn't spoken to anyone outside of Dr. Harris in 2 days. She'd kept Lily off social media since the story broke, turned down 2 reporters, and blocked 5 unknown numbers. The world outside didn't care about nuance. They wanted a villain. Max didn't notice. Or maybe he did, but he didn't show it. He moved more now, limping slightly but with confidence. Favoring his healing leg, he had returned to his favorite perch beside the bookshelf, a low, sunlit spot where he could see every doorway. Lily adored him more than ever. She called to him now. "Max! Max!" Offering him toys, babbling about birds, apples, nonsense words, and squeals of joy. He never responded the way a dog might. But he listened. Every time. He would sit within 6 feet of her, eyes tracking her small movements with silent attention. And when she slept, he would curl by the sliding door where her crib's reflection appeared faintly in the glass. Emily watched it all with an ache she couldn't explain. It was beautiful and impossible, and by every professional standard, wrong. That night, she sat on the porch while Lily slept. Max lay nearby, silhouetted in the soft light spilling from the house. A cicada buzzed in the tree line. Coyotes yipped faintly in the distance. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another voicemail. Another article forwarded by Lisa. She ignored them all. Instead, she opened her photo library. One image stood out. Lily sitting on the porch steps with Max beside her. They weren't touching, just sitting, side by side, watching a butterfly. It looked like something from a children's book. It looked fake. Emily stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "They'll never believe this is real." By the weekend, the pressure became unavoidable. Lisa called again, this time not to warn, but to apologize. "I tried to talk to the board," she said. "Tried to tell them Max isn't the issue, but it's bigger than that now." Emily was silent. Lisa continued, "It's the optics. A wild predator, and a baby in the same home. They don't care if it's safe. They care if it looks irresponsible. Emily laughed bitterly. So we're guilty of how it looks, not what it is. That's how it works, Em. You know that. What happens next? They're considering emergency revocation. It's not final yet, but the media attention made them nervous. Emily's jaw clenched. So what? They show up and take him, drag him away in front of my daughter. No, they'd give you a written order. You'd have time to comply. How generous. Lisa hesitated. There's something else. They're not just looking at Max. They're reviewing your parenting situation, your custody file, your status as sole guardian. Emily's blood ran cold. They're threatening Lily now. No one's saying that outright, but the subtext is there. They think maybe you're emotionally compromised. Emily gripped the porch railing. He saved her life. I know, Lisa said softly. But they're not looking at that. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Every noise set her on edge. The hum of the fridge, the distant bark of a dog, the wind tapping the shutters. She checked Lily's monitor 3 times, checked Max 4. Around 3 a.m. she stood at the kitchen sink, staring into the dark. She thought about giving up, letting them take Max. She could frame it as compliance, cooperate and walk away, keep Lily safe from the fight, let the public have its say. But the thought made her stomach turn, because it would be a lie. And Lily would know. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday when she was old enough to ask, what happened to Max? Emily would have to look into her daughter's eyes and say, I gave him up. And she couldn't do that. The next morning, she took Lily into town. They needed groceries. They needed normalcy. The moment she entered the store, she felt it. The stares. 2 women near the produce section whispered behind avocados. A man in the frozen aisle did a double take. Even the cashier looked at Lily like she was made of glass. Emily smiled politely, held her head high, but her grip on the cart was white-knuckled. As she buckled Lily into the car seat, she heard someone approach. Excuse me. Emily turned. It was a woman in her 40s, denim jacket, a canvas tote bag slung over one shoulder. I just wanted to say. The woman hesitated, glancing toward Lily, then back at Emily. I saw the article and the video. Emily braced herself. The woman's eyes filled with tears. And I think what that Bobcat did was beautiful. Emily stared at her. The woman continued, voice shaky. When my son was 2, our dog pulled him away from the road just before a car sped by. No one believed me either. They said I imagined it, that I gave a pet too much credit. Emily exhaled slowly. I believe you, the woman said, nodding. Don't let them tell you what you saw. Then she turned and walked away. Emily stood there for a long time, heart heavy, but no longer alone. That afternoon, Emily recorded a video. Just her, sitting on the porch, the sound of wind in the trees. She spoke plainly. No music, no edits, just the truth. She told the full story, from Max's rescue, to the bite, to the moment he dragged Lily away from danger. She didn't beg for approval, didn't ask for forgiveness. She just told the world what actually happened. Then she posted it, and waited. Emily didn't expect much. She posted the video to YouTube and Facebook, with a plain title, The Truth About Max. No hashtags, no marketing, no attempt to go viral. She simply needed it out there, the story in her own voice, before the board could twist it into something cold and clinical, before the media filtered Max into a headline and forgot the soul beneath the fur. She recorded it in one take. In it, she spoke about the moment Max was rescued, the decision to take him in, the tightrope of ethics and responsibility. She described the day he moved Lily, not with aggression, not with confusion, but with purpose. Then the bite. Then the silence. Then the unthinkable bond that had formed between a predator and a child. I'm not asking for sympathy, she said at the end. I'm not asking for permission to keep Max. I'm asking that people see what he did and what it means. Not every miracle fits inside the rules. By nightfall, the video had been shared 400 times. By the next morning, it had been viewed 70,000. The comments poured in. This story broke me. I had no idea animals could show that kind of loyalty. Watching this while holding my newborn, crying, "Thank you for sharing this. We don't deserve animals. Max is a hero." I'm a vet tech. Seen a lot. Never seen anything like this. That cat's instincts aren't just wild, they're human. If they take Max, we riot. Emily read each one with disbelief. Some made her cry, others made her laugh in short, stunned bursts. A few people even offered to help cover legal costs or provide character testimony. The tide, somehow, was turning. By the second day, the local news station called. This time, Emily answered. She agreed to a single interview, no cameras near Lily. No questions outside the agreed scope, no dramatization. The segment aired that night. Emily seated on her porch, speaking calmly while Max sat several feet away, alert but relaxed. The footage cut to Lily toddling through the yard, a safe distance from Max, her laughter light in the background. The news anchor closed the segment with, "It's the story of a woman who dared to believe that wild things can love, and of a bobcat who proved her right." That same night, the Arizona Wildlife Licensing Board released a formal update. "We are reopening the evaluation of Emily Parker's permit pending new information and community feedback. No action will be taken until further notice." Emily slumped onto the couch when she read it, hands trembling with relief. It wasn't over. But it wasn't over yet. Dr. Harris stopped by the next morning with 2 university researchers in tow. One of them, a silver-haired behavioral ecologist named Dr. June Sellers, held a tablet loaded with clips from Emily's video and footage from the news segment. "I've seen maternal imprinting," she said as Max watched from the sun-drenched rug. "I've seen learned association, but I've never seen this." She turned to Emily. "May I ask you a few questions for the study?" "Sure. What do you believe motivates Max's behavior toward Lily?" Emily hesitated. "I don't know if I can explain it scientifically. I don't think it's maternal instinct, and it's not protection of territory." Sellers nodded. "Agreed. I think he recognizes her," Emily said slowly. "On some level, not as prey, not as threat, as something worth guarding. Like kin." Emily met her eyes. "Exactly." The researcher nodded and scribbled a note. "It might be unique," she said softly, "but this case could change how we understand certain species forever." That evening, Emily sat on the floor beside Lily while Max lounged nearby, head on his paws. Lily was stacking wooden blocks, muttering a song-like pattern of nonsense words. "Red, blue, Max, boom," she giggled. Emily smiled. "Is that your new masterpiece?" Lily turned to the bobcat. "Max, watch!" And Max, slowly, lazily, lifted his head. He blinked at her, then stayed. And Emily's heart clenched again at the thing she still didn't have words for. It wasn't mimicry, it wasn't coincidence. It was connection. 2 days later, the licensing board sent a follow-up notice. They requested one more in-person evaluation, but not to investigate, to document. Emily agreed. The team arrived on a Wednesday morning. This time there were 5 of them, 3 officials, 1 wildlife psychologist, and a documentarian. "We've never had a case like this," said the lead evaluator, a woman named Tilda with graying braids. "We're not here to judge. We're here to understand." Max behaved perfectly. Calm, alert, observant. When Lily played on the rug, he lay nearby with eyes half-lidded, but focused. When she toddled past him, he didn't flinch. When she dropped a plastic cup beside him, he didn't react. Later, when Emily prepared Max's food, Lily followed her, mimicking each step in exaggerated motions. Max watched her carefully, but never interfered. The documentarian whispered to the psychologist, "That's not instinct." "No," the psychologist replied. "That's choice." After the visit, Emily received a text from Lisa. You just changed their minds. Not because of what you said, but because Max didn't have to say anything. That weekend, Emily took Lily out to the backyard. Max followed, limping only slightly now, strength returning each day. The grass had grown soft and green from the early monsoon rains. The air was warm, but gentle. Lily sat near the flower bed, with a bucket of dirt and sticks, fully engrossed in her toddler excavation. Max settled beside the stone path, head on paws, watching her. Emily sat a few feet away with a notebook in her lap. She'd started writing again. Not reports, not statements, just memory. Not the kind you store for lawyers or files, the kind you pass down. She was writing a letter for Lily to read one day, about Max, about the day everything changed, about the boundary between human and wild, and how sometimes love doesn't recognize it. That night, Max returned to the porch. He hadn't sat there since before the bite. Emily stepped outside and joined him, blanket over her shoulders. Looks like the world finally caught up with you, she said quietly. Max didn't respond. He just stared out at the trees. Emily followed his gaze. A family of deer crossed the ridge, hooves quiet against the dirt. The wind shifted. The air smelled of pine and distant rain. She exhaled. Maybe this was what trust looked like. Not obedience, not affection, just presence. It happened fast. Too fast. 1 minute, Emily was pouring coffee in the kitchen, sunlight streaming across the tile. The next, the back door flew open and Mrs. Thornton stumbled in, face white, breath ragged. Emily, she gasped. There's a man in your yard. He has a gun. Emily dropped the mug. Ceramic shattered across the floor. She bolted toward the porch, heart pounding. Mrs. Thornton grabbed her arm. Don't go out there. I tried to stop him. He says he's with wildlife control, but he's not in uniform. He said something about neutralizing the threat. I think he's here for Max. Emily froze. Where's Lily? She's with me inside. She's okay. But Emily's eyes were already locked on the yard. Max was standing, rigid, tail low, ears forward. In front of him, about 20 feet away, was a man in dark jeans and a green jacket, holding a long-barreled rifle. The barrel was pointed straight at Max. Emily didn't think. She ran. The man turned slightly as she burst through the door. Don't move, he barked. This isn't your business. It is exactly my business, Emily shouted. That's my animal. The man's jaw clenched. This bobcat is unauthorized. It's a threat to the neighborhood. You're endangering people. Emily stepped between him and Max, arms outstretched. Put the gun down. He's wild. He saved my daughter's life. He could kill someone else's. From the corner of her eye, she saw Max step back, calmly, carefully, not afraid, not aggressive, just watching. The man shifted his grip. I'm calling the police, Emily warned. Do it. I'm calling the media too. His expression flickered. Emily's voice dropped, deadly calm. And I promise, if you pull that trigger, your face will be everywhere tomorrow. There was a beat of silence. Then the man lowered the rifle. 10 minutes later, a squad car arrived. The man was already sitting on the curb by then, handcuffed. The rifle bagged in the trunk. Officer Jimenez took Emily's statement while another officer spoke to Mrs. Thornton. He wasn't sent by anyone official. Jimenez confirmed. No badge, no credentials. He claims he read about Max online and drove in from Flagstaff. Emily rubbed her forehead. He said he thought Max was a threat. Well, he's the threat now. Unlawful discharge of a firearm in a residential area. Attempted harm of a permitted animal. You're well within your rights to press charges. I don't care about charges, she muttered. I just wanted to stop. But it wouldn't, because now she knew. Some people weren't just skeptical. Some people were afraid. That night, Lily was quiet. Emily tucked her in and sat by the crib longer than usual, watching her chest rise and fall. Max lay near the window again. He hadn't moved during the chaos, hadn't growled, hadn't bared his teeth. He'd understood. He'd known that anything he did, even defending himself, could be the end. Emily joined him on the floor later, pressing her forehead gently to his. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I brought you into this. I thought I could protect you, but they won't stop." Max blinked slowly. Somehow, that made it worse. The next morning, the story hit the news. Armed man arrested outside Prescott home after confrontation with viral Bobcat. The footage from a neighbor's security camera showed Emily standing between the man and Max. The image was grainy but powerful. Woman, wildcat, weapon, a mother against the world. Comments flooded in again. Supporters, detractors, the curious, the enraged, and just beneath the noise, a growing, humming movement. People were beginning to care. Not just about Emily, about Max. Later that day, Lisa called. "You okay?" "No," Emily said honestly. Lisa sighed. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see this coming. None of us did." "You've made it this far," Lisa said. "And now, the board wants to offer you something." Emily blinked. "What?" "A permanent wildlife ambassador status for Max, with full protections, including legal immunity from relocation." Emily felt like the air had been sucked from the room. "It's rare," Lisa added. "But after everything, the footage, the researchers, the public support, they're calling him exceptional." Emily sat down, stunned. "Why now?" she asked. "Because he stayed calm," Lisa said. "He didn't attack. He didn't panic. He trusted you. And that shows." The offer arrived officially the next day. Emily read it 5 times. It was real. Max would be allowed to stay, legally, permanently, fully recognized. Not just as an animal under care, but as an ambassador of wildlife-human coexistence. He would be listed in the state register, protected from seizure or relocation, unless clear aggression was documented. Emily signed it that evening, with shaking hands, and a heart that felt like it could finally exhale. That night, after Lily was asleep, Emily let Max out into the enclosure. The first time since the incident. He limped a little, but he moved with confidence. He padded through the grass, sniffed the edges, rubbed his head against the tree trunk he loved so much. And then he stopped, looked back at the porch, and waited. Emily stepped outside. He didn't move, so she sat on the steps, watching him under the stars. No fences between them, no fear, just the space between species and the bridge they'd built. By the end of the week, Max had become more than a bobcat. He was a symbol. To scientists, he was a behavioral anomaly. To journalists, a headline machine. To thousands online, he was the living embodiment of the idea that the wild doesn't always stay wild, and that sometimes it doesn't have to. Emily watched it all unfold, like someone standing underwater seeing everything move above the surface in distorted waves. Max didn't change. He still lay by the windows, still watched Lily from a distance, still flicked his tail when he was annoyed, still flattened his ears at the sound of lawnmowers. But everyone else did. The emails multiplied. PBS wanted to do a segment. A wildlife sanctuary in Montana offered to fly Emily and Max out for a national conference on predator rehabilitation. A New York journalist offered $3,000 for an exclusive interview with the bobcat present. Emily turned most of them down. She wasn't interested in turning Max into a media puppet. She'd fought too hard to preserve his space, his dignity, his wildness. But one invitation caught her attention. It was from a local university, the same research team Dr. Sellers belonged to. They wanted to bring in a small group of graduate students to observe Max's behavior on site over a 2-week period. No cages, no labs, just quiet observation, Emily agreed. On one condition. They don't treat him like a lab rat. He's not a subject. He's a being. Sellers nodded. Understood. We'll follow his lead. The students arrived Monday morning. Max watched them from behind the screen door, head tilted, ears forward. They can't interact, Emily said. They can observe, take notes. But that's it. One of the students, a tall young man named Devon, nodded. We just want to understand. Emily wasn't sure they ever would. But maybe that wasn't the point. Lily took it all in stride. To her, the arrival of 3 new humans with notebooks and clipboards was only interesting if they had snacks. Mostly, she ignored them. She spent her mornings playing with dirt and sticks, her afternoons painting the porch steps with water from a toy cup, and her evenings babbling to Max, who watched it all with steady, unblinking patience. One afternoon, Devon asked the question everyone was thinking. Do you think Max loves her? Emily didn't answer at first. She sat on the edge of the porch, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes fixed on the moment playing out in front of her. Lily offering Max a blue plastic ring, Max ignoring it completely, but not moving away either. He doesn't show affection like a dog, she said finally. And I've never trained him, but I think, yes. In his way. Devon jotted something down. Emily watched him out of the corner of her eye. Why, you trying to prove animals feel love? I'm trying to understand if what he's doing is instinct or choice. Emily looked back toward Max. I stopped asking that question a long time ago. That night, Emily sat at her desk, reviewing a draft article from the university team. They'd asked her to consult before publishing it. It was titled, Between Prey and Partner. Case study of an unreleasable lynx rufus demonstrating protective behavior toward a human infant. She read the whole thing twice. The language was clinical, precise, careful not to anthropomorphize, but one line stopped her cold. While no single behavior confirms emotional bonding in wild species, the continued unprovoked proximity between subject and child may suggest a depth of recognition we do not yet have the language to classify. Emily leaned back in her chair. They didn't have the words, but maybe they didn't need them. Some things weren't meant to be labeled. Some things were just felt. The next morning, she walked into the kitchen and found Lily crouched beside Max, whispering into his fur. He wasn't moving, just listening. Emily stayed still, afraid to break the moment. Lily's hand moved in a small circle against Max's shoulder, tiny, careful motions. Max closed his eyes. Emily blinked back the sting in hers. There it was again, the thing no study could capture. 2 days later, a woman from the state education department arrived. She introduced herself as Helena. We're developing a curriculum about human-wildlife relationships, she said, elementary level. Something that doesn't just teach fear, but understanding. Emily folded her arms. You want to use Max? We want to include him. Tell his story. Let students think critically about the balance between safety and coexistence. Emily didn't answer right away. Helena continued. We won't use footage without your approval, and it wouldn't be about you. It would be about the choice Max made. Emily looked past her, through the window, where Max lay under the oak tree. A wild shape in a human yard. A line no longer drawn. Okay, she said finally. But you tell them the truth. Helena raised an eyebrow. What truth? That we didn't tame him. We just learned to live beside him. That evening, Emily opened her journal. The letter she was writing to Lily had grown from a few scribbled pages into something bigger, an ongoing story. A living record. She had started it thinking she'd write down one incredible event. Now she realized she was chronicling something rarer. The evolution of a bond that didn't belong to one world or the other. She wrote, They'll tell you it was risky, that I should have known better, that wild animals don't belong with children, and most of the time, they're right. But not always. Not when the animal decides otherwise. As dusk settled, Lily sat beside Max in the yard, stacking smooth rocks into a crooked tower. He didn't help. He didn't move, but he stayed. When the final rock fell, Lily clapped her hands. Max! Boom! Max yawned, wide and slow. Then, for the first time, he leaned forward and gently nudged a small stone toward her. Lily gasped in delight. He helped. Emily stood frozen in the doorway, hand to her mouth. That tiny gesture, barely more than a nudge, was more powerful than any headline, any article, any scientific report. It was the wild offering something back, not because it was asked for, but because it chose to. The email arrived late. Emily almost missed it. Buried beneath newsletters and spam, the subject line plain, inquiry regarding Max, Smithsonian Institute. She blinked at it 3 times before opening it. A message was direct, but respectful. A zoologist named Dr. Carl Levins was leading a multi-year initiative on interspecies cognition and behavioral anomalies. He'd read the university case study, seen the footage, and reviewed her video. Max represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deepen our understanding of cross-species behavioral intelligence. We'd like to fund a long-term observational study on site in Prescott. With full respect for your terms and Max's freedom, we're prepared to offer a substantial grant for participation. Emily read it twice, then a third time. Then she shut her laptop and stared into the darkness of her living room. Max lay asleep by the fireplace, one leg stretched, tail twitching. She felt both honored and invaded. The next morning, she forwarded the message to Dr. Harris and Lisa. Both responded quickly. Lisa, it's legitimate. Carl Levins is a big deal, top of the field. This would put Max's story into academic history forever. Dr. Harris, they'll be respectful, but they'll want access. Think hard about what that means. For you and for Max. Emily did. All morning, while Lily painted wooden blocks with water on the porch, while Max watched a hawk spiral overhead from the garden edge, while the breeze carried in the scent of juniper and the low hum of cicadas starting early. She thought about what they had now, quiet, rare, hard-won, and what could be lost the moment they let the world in. That night, she brought it up to Mrs. Thornton over dinner. The older woman sipped her tea, listening intently. They'll pay, Emily said. They'll do it on our terms, but they'll be here, watching, writing things down. Interpreting, like scientists do, Mrs. Thornton said gently. Emily nodded. And I get it. I do. But Max isn't a thesis. He's not a case study. He's Max. Mrs. Thornton smiled. Then she said something Emily didn't expect. That might be exactly why you should let them. Emily blinked. What? Because Max isn't just a story anymore. He's a question. One that might make people rethink everything they assume about wildness and worth. Emily looked toward the sliding door, where Max now sat beside Lily's blanket. What if they ruin him? She whispered. They can't ruin what he already is, Mrs. Thornton said. They can only try to understand it. Still, Emily didn't respond to the email. Not yet. Instead, she watched. Watched Lily hand Max a stuffed toy, which he sniffed once and ignored. Watched Max chase a moth along the fence line, limping slightly but with grace. Watched them coexist, day after day, without fanfare. And she wrote. Every night after Lily was asleep, she added to her growing letter-turned-journal. It had become a collection now, reflections, drawings, newspaper clippings, snippets of Lily's toddler babble and Max's small gestures, a memory project, a living record. She titled the last page, she wrote, What You Protect When You Choose Silence. And on the next, What You Risk When You Choose Visibility. By the end of the week, the decision still loomed. Dr. Levins emailed again. No pressure. We're happy to wait. Just know that our offer stands and that we understand the sensitivity of what you've built. Emily sighed. It would have been easier if he were arrogant, but he wasn't. He seemed like someone who genuinely wanted to learn, and maybe the world needed more people like that. That Sunday morning, she found Lily in the yard with Max again. This time, they weren't playing. Lily was crying, softly, not loudly enough to alarm, but enough to pull Emily outside immediately. She knelt. What happened, sweetheart? Lily pointed to a broken flower pot beside the fence. Max boom, she sniffled. Emily looked at the pot. One of Lily's painted ones. A flower she'd planted had tipped over, soil scattered. The stem bent. Max stood a few feet away, unmoving. Emily frowned. Did Max break it? Lily shook her head hard. No, he tried to catch it. Emily tilted her head. Catch what? A bird. Emily's heart slowed. She looked at the pot again. Small feathers were mixed into the soil. It hadn't been Max's fault. He'd chased a bird. Maybe the bird startled Lily. Maybe the pot got knocked over in the commotion. But what struck Emily most was what Max was doing now. Standing, still, watching Lily cry, and not moving, not slinking away, not retreating like most wild animals would. He was holding space, not understanding every emotion, but present. Anyway, that night, Emily sat beside Max on the porch. She didn't pet him. She never did. But she spoke. They want to study you, understand you, write your name in journals. I don't know if that's a gift or a theft. Max didn't move. Emily smiled faintly. You probably don't care either way, do you? She tilted her head back, looking at the stars. But I do. And then she made her decision. The next day, she emailed Dr. Levins. I'll do it. On 3 conditions. Max is never restrained, sedated, or touched without medical need. Lily is not included in any footage without my explicit approval. You come here, you stay here, you learn here, not in a lab, not behind a mirror, but in the place where Max lives, as he lives. Levins replied within hours, agreed to all 3. Emily set the phone down and exhaled. It was done. The world was coming, but maybe, just maybe, it would come on Max's term. The cameras came quietly. No boom mics, no lights, just a 3-person crew and a soft-spoken documentarian named Elise, who had filmed mountain wolves for years and insisted on shooting in natural light only. They set up their base in a small trailer at the edge of the property. No one asked Max to perform. They filmed him the way he lived, on his own schedule, in his own rhythm. Sometimes he barely acknowledged them. Sometimes he stared straight into the lens, unblinking, as if demanding they understand what they could never ask. Lily, now almost 2, remained unaware of the significance. She played, she laughed, she pointed at the equipment and called it big cameras, and tried to feed Max toy grapes. Max remained, Max, present, still, watching the world move around him like a wind he'd already felt. By the 3rd week, the crew had recorded nearly 30 hours of footage. But it was one 5-second clip that changed everything. Lily had been playing near the flower beds when a loud crack echoed from beyond the ridge. Some neighbor's firewood splitting or perhaps a hunting rifle far off. The noise startled her. She flinched. Her eyes welled. And before Emily could even move from the porch, Max was there. He hadn't growled, hadn't pounced. He had just stood beside her, ears high, tail still, body blocking the space between Lily and the trees, not threatening, just there. She reached for him. Her hand landed on his shoulder, and he stayed. The crew said nothing, but the camera was rolling. It captured the second Lily whispered, "It's okay," and patted his fur once before returning to her scattered toys. The footage aired 6 weeks later. The documentary aired first on public television. Then it spread like lightning. Max wasn't just viral. He became iconic. Not for doing tricks. Not for being cute. But for being uncompromisingly wild and still choosing to stay. The documentary didn't dramatize. It let silence speak. Elise, the director, titled it simply, Max. People sent letters. Some typed. Many handwritten. Children mailed drawings of bobcats with tiny hands in their paws. Veterans wrote about their service dogs. Mothers shared stories of pets that had watched over their kids like angels. A zoo in Oregon created a sculpture in his honor, a bronze bobcat facing west, back straight, eyes forward, with a small child beside him, arms lifted like wings. But Emily kept it all in a box under her bed, because Max didn't need fame, and neither did she. What mattered wasn't the spotlight. It was the light itself. Max lived 2 more years. Time passed gently. His limp grew more noticeable, but he never lost his independence. He stopped chasing moths, but still watched them with interest. He slept more in the sun, let Lily braid wildflowers near his paws, let Emily sit a little closer at night. He never allowed touch beyond what he decided, but he never left. He never ran, not once. Not even when the enclosure was left open by accident one summer morning. Emily had woken in panic, raced outside, and found him still lying on the porch steps, eyes blinking slowly in the rising heat. He passed in his sleep. No warning, no suffering, just a quiet dawn. Emily found him under the oak tree, his favorite place, head resting against the warm earth. She knelt, breath caught in her chest, hand hovering above him. Lily stood beside her, older now, wiser than her years. "Is he sleeping?" she whispered. Emily shook her head. Tears welled. "No, baby, he's not sleeping." Lily didn't cry. She knelt beside him and placed a smooth stone near his paw. "Thank you," she said. Then she walked back inside. They buried him beneath the oak, just the 3 of them, Emily, Lily, and Mrs. Thornton. No press, no public vigil, just silence, broken by wind and memory. They placed the stone from Lily at the head, and beneath it, a plaque. Max. He stayed when he didn't have to. Seasons turned. Lily grew. The house grew quieter, but the absence never fully settled. Max had never spoken a word, never answered a command, never played fetch or begged for treats. Yet the hole he left behind was larger than any pet could have filled. Because Max wasn't a pet. He was a bridge, a guardian, a question the world still hadn't answered. One spring afternoon, a boy from a local school field trip stood beside the oak tree and asked, "Why didn't he run away?" Emily didn't answer. Because she still didn't know. Maybe it was trauma. Maybe it was injury. Maybe it was Lily's laughter. Maybe it was something older than science, deeper than instinct. A soul that recognized something it wanted to protect. So instead of answering, she asked the boy, "Why do you stay with people you love?" He blinked, then nodded slowly, and walked on. That night, Emily sat by the porch with her journal. The last page was blank. She stared at it for a long time, then wrote, "We spend so much time trying to tame the wild, but sometimes the wild chooses to sit beside us anyway. Not because it's been broken, not because it's been trained, but because it sees something worth staying for." She closed the book. The air smelled of pine again. The stars blinked awake, and from somewhere deep in the woods, far beyond her reach, a sound echoed. Not a growl, not a howl, but a silence that somehow sounded like goodbye.